So, hi everybody. My name is Neely, and I'm on the core career services team here at CareerFoundry. I've worked at CareerFoundry since 2019. And a little fun fact about me, and I didn't tell Cecile that we were going to be doing a fun fact, but a little fun fact about me is that my parents named me after a character in a book from the 60s. So, a little fun fact about me. Cecile, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Cecile. I'm a CareerFoundry graduate, and I've been working as a UX designer since the beginning of May this year after completing the CareerFoundry bootcamp and career preparation course. And fun fact about me is that I was named after Saint Cecile, the patron saint of music, and I also do a lot of music as a hobby, so that was pretty fitting.
That's great. So tonight we're just going to talk a little bit about kind of getting off the job boards and networking. And Cecile did an amazing job of doing this. So I think a good first place to start is if you could just tell me a little bit about your professional background. What did you do before you came to CareerFoundry?
Sure. So before I came to CareerFoundry, I spent 10 years working as a pastry chef in a college dining hall. So I was pretty much responsible for baking all their breakfast and lunch and dinner stuff. It was pretty good. It had good hours, but eventually the job started changing. They started asking me to do more manager kind of things. And it was drifting away from what I really loved, which was like making a noticeable impact on people. You know, they'd see the desserts, they would love it. I would get that warm and fuzzy feeling, and I had complete control over my creative process. Mm-hmm. So I was starting to do more things that I wasn't so excited about, like negotiating who had what days off, and just wasn't so rewarding.
So how do you think that your background in pastry arts kind of prepared you for a career in UX?
I think that it really gave me practice in sort of putting myself off to the side and really focusing on what the customer wanted. I would see a lot of times people thinking, oh, well, I love this food, therefore all the students are going to love this food. And I would just see that that really wasn't the case. And I'd get frustrated, seeing other chefs do that. And I was always really concerned with, like, what desserts are they actually eating? What do they actually like? You know, I'm not going to make this dessert that I think is the most awesome thing in the world if it doesn't fit this particular customer base, which, you know, it's college students I'm from Boston. So college students in New England aren't necessarily going to like the same thing that people who go to a fancy restaurant are going to want.
Yeah. No creme brulee, more like brownies or something like that.
Yeah. One time I tried to do a creme brulee thinking it would be super exciting, and they were like, what's that? It looks gross.
So talk to me a little bit about why you decided to enroll in the job prep course and kind of your experience with that.
Yeah. Actually, one of the reasons that I chose CareerFoundry was I saw that it had a job prep course. Job searching is not something that I felt like I was very good at. And I presume that most people don't feel like they're good at it because, like, let's face it, the goal is to job search as little as possible throughout your career, probably. So we don't have practice with this except for every several years. And I really like that CareerFoundry would give you some guidance and just how to craft a resume that people are going to want to read, how to get into the heads of the people who are going to hire you. What do they need to know about you? How do you present yourself? How do you answer those hard questions like, tell me about yourself? I thought that was a really important part of what CareerFoundry offered, was how to actually present your skills once you've acquired them through the bootcamp.
And our job prep course is a pretty straightforward curriculum where we talk about interviewing and resume and cover letters and things like that. But how did you kind of put your own spin on it?
I really tried to absorb all the material in the job prep course. It's maybe straightforward, but there's a lot of really good information in there, and it's easy to just sort of read it, and it goes in one ear, out the other. And I started to create like structures for myself to make sure that I was actually applying all this information. So I took the advice from the course and put together a little like question sheet for myself. So every job posting that I wanted to apply to, I looked through all these questions. I made sure that I answered them. Like, what is this person looking for? Why do they think it's worth it to hire somebody? It's going to cost them money. What are they looking to get out of it? What sort of skills would a person need to actually give them the value that they're looking for? And how do my skills line up with the skills that they're looking for? So for every job I applied to, I actually had a template of that sheet with the questions, and I would fill it out before I even wrote my job application. And I would use those answers to craft my resume and my cover letter to make sure that I was lining up with what they were looking for.
I'm sorry. So I was just going to kind of follow up on that. You had said that you asked some questions about yourself when you saw the job posting. Can you talk a little bit about what those questions were?
So I would do some research and I would see like, what's the mission of this company? What are their values? What sort of soft skills are they probably looking for based on their job description? Like I would also read through the job description and highlight soft skills in one color. Like they'd say, collaborates well with this type of person, or is able to lead such and such. And then in another color, I would highlight the hard skills, like makes clickable prototypes, does wireframing. And so I would see where those things lined up with what I could do. And I asked myself, like, what can I give this company that they're looking for? And so I tried to make sure that my answers to those questions were very clearly reflected in my cover letter and resume. And I found that the cover letter was more useful for highlighting soft skills and the resume was more useful for highlighting hard skills. Mm-hmm. But pretty much anything that I highlighted in that job description, I tried to shoehorn it in there somewhere in exactly the same language that they had used in the job description.
Okay. Did you feel like you had everything included or just the majority of what they had mentioned in the job posting?
A lot of the time between your resume and your cover letter, you can get most of that stuff in there. Mm-hmm. I didn't include things that didn't apply to me. So not everything in the job posting was something that I had the ability or mm-hmm. training to do. But often in my cover letter, I would mention that I'm very teachable and eager to learn. So hopefully that would cover a lot of the gaps. But if there was a hard skill in there that I didn't have training in, I just didn't mention it anywhere. Like, you shouldn't put yourself out there as having abilities that you don't have. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you felt as though it's easier to talk about soft skills in a cover letter. Do you have any examples of how you did that?
So a cover letter gives you a little bit more room to explain something. Mm-hmm. A resume, you really have like, I don't know, maybe a 7-word bullet point for job descriptions. So those are easier to say, like, created clickable prototypes of whatever. And in a cover letter, it's easier to say, like, I worked with this cross-functional team and I was involved in supporting the engineers doing X, Y, and Z. And in my past jobs, this is a great place to mention past jobs. I have had a lot of experience building teams who are very supportive and open to feedback and non-judgmental. Those are the sort of things that are easier to say in a cover letter because you just have a little more room to expand.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned talking about past jobs. I think sometimes when students come into the job prep course and they're looking for a job, they feel like their past job doesn't apply. I know that you had mentioned earlier about how you felt your career as a pastry chef kind of helped you move into UX, but what would you recommend somebody doing if they were kind of unsure of how to talk about it?
I would say one thing you can do is look at job descriptions and think about which of these things did I have practice with in my past job. And it probably is going to be the soft skills. The hard skills are why we come to a boot camp to learn. But every job that you have is going to give you experience working as a team. Probably most jobs you're going to have experience empathizing with your customer or the person that you serve, and getting different perspectives on things. You're going to have experience collaborating. All of those things, you shouldn't hide the fact that you have those experiences. You probably have experience juggling multiple priorities, which a lot of jobs are going to need you to do. So if you can pick out those things and figure out what sort of language to talk about them in, like, I'm not going to say paid attention to which desserts students ate, but I could say exactly the same thing using language that is more similar to what these job descriptions are saying, which is like observed customer needs.
And implemented what they were looking for, or something like that.
Like, designed and updated pastry menu based on customer feedback. So you can just rephrase these things, and it's not like you're being even the least bit untruthful. You're just framing it in a way that your potential employer can understand what you're talking about and can easily understand how it applies to them.
How did you stay consistent when you were doing your job search?
I think that template that I came up with was really helpful. So doing kind of templatizing my process helped. So it was like, okay, I know step one is going to be looking through all the job descriptions and picking out the top 5 that I feel are most worth applying to this week. Step 2 is going to be for each one, I'm going to fill out my template, answer the questions, do my little highlighting. Step 3 is going to be updating my resume for that thing. Step 4 is going to be writing my cover letter. Step 5 is going to be trying to find contact information for the hiring manager or someone on the team to send a letter of interest. And then, so for each one, it was like I was doing the same steps for each one, so I wasn't going to forget any part of the process. And another thing that really helped was I would send Neely updates every week. And the Career Foundry suggests that you talk to your career specialist every 2 weeks, but I think every week is better because every 2 weeks is like you forget about it, you don't remember what you did last week. So during the week, anytime like an event would happen in my job search, like talking to a recruiter or sending a job application, I would start a draft email and I just log all those events that happened that week. You know, maybe I got some good advice that I was thinking about how to add to my job search process, or maybe I got some encouraging feedback. So I would just list all those things, and then at the end of the week, I would send Neely an email saying what I had done that week. And so I kind of knew in the back of my head, like, I need to do my stuff this week or else I'm not going to have anything to tell me. And she's going to notice because I've been sending her updates every week.
Yeah, it definitely helps with accountability. You know, if you feel like, or if you give yourself that assignment that you're going to send something every week, then it gives you a little bit of accountability to keep doing it. So how many jobs, so you got your process down pretty good. And then how many jobs would you say that you applied to a week? We recommend, or for the job guarantee, it's 5. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how did you decide what jobs to apply for and how many did you apply for?
Yeah, so I really tried to limit myself to exactly 5, because if you start making yourself apply to billions of jobs, then you just burn out really fast. And the quality of your applications is going to go down. And so I really tried to prioritize my top 5 this week, which were, I kept a spreadsheet of things that I had applied to. And at the bottom, I had a section of like links to job descriptions that I didn't apply to yet, but I thought I might want to apply to. They just didn't make it into my top 5 for that week. So then the next week, if I was looking at job boards or LinkedIn or talking to recruiters or whatever, and I felt like I was short a couple, I would look at that list and see if there was one from a past week that I wanted to apply to. So when I'm looking at job descriptions to decide whether I actually want to apply, one thing is I did look at how many years of experience they wanted, and anything that was more than 5, I was like, okay, that's probably outside what I can do. But anything that was like 3 or less is definitely worth looking at, because a lot of the time the job duties on there are stuff that you're totally prepared to do. So I would focus more on like, so I knew in the back of my head that I was going to go through this job description and highlight the things that I could do. So I would sort of skim over it and get a sense of like, how much of this job description could I actually highlight? And so if I felt like I could highlight a good bit of it, then I thought it was worth applying to, even if they wanted 3 years of experience, because, you know, they say they want that. They don't know if they want that.
Well, it is kind of a wish list, you know, it's like
Yeah,
their ideal candidate. So, you know, everyone has an ideal candidate. And I think a job description is just a way that they kind of feature it. One thing I wanted to follow up on is you had said that you, in your steps of your job search process, you had reached out to people. And I think sometimes people are hesitant to do that. So can you just explain a little bit about how you found people to reach out to and what you actually did? How did you reach out to them?
Yeah. So early in my job search process, I was talking to a hiring manager who mentioned that anytime a candidate actually found their email and sent them a little email note saying, hey, I'm really interested in this opportunity, that impressed them, because this particular person was not very hard to find online. And so like the barrier there was pretty low, but most people didn't even bother to try. And so the few people who did try to make a personal connection with them really got their attention. So as soon as I heard that, I thought I need to add that to my standard operating procedure. It's not always easy. It's not always easy to tell who the hiring manager is, but I would sort of stalk the company on LinkedIn and see if I could find somebody who looked like they were involved with the team, and then maybe Google their name, maybe find their portfolio website, maybe in some cases I really couldn't find anybody, which is too bad, but sometimes I would at least be able to send a LinkedIn message to somebody. They didn't always open it, but I definitely got a few interviews that I would not have gotten otherwise by reaching out personally. So I would recommend always trying to make some sort of overture to an actual person on the team if you can find contact information for anyone, because really, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, what's the worst thing?
Yeah,
I mean, they don't respond.
Yeah. So like realistically, the worst that happens is that they don't respond. I guess in some fantasy world they could respond with a nasty email saying, how dare you, but they're not going to do that. Of course they're not going to do that.
And if like by some chance that happened, you wouldn't want to work there anyway. So,
right.
You know,
so win, win.
It's a good screening process. What did you say in these messages?
Those messages were super short because you don't want to bog them down with a lot of stuff. But I just said, hey, and I did it right after I applied. So I said, hey, I just applied to this position. My application materials should be in your system, just in case I'm attaching my resume and cover letter. I'd really be excited to work with your team because, and then, you know, short sentence about why I thought their values matched up with mine, or why I thought their project was important, or something like that, or why I personally want to grow in that direction of their product. You know, like I really want to work on consumer facing apps that help people manage their health or something. And
I'm sorry,
that was it. it was like a 2 or 3 line email.
And then did you do email mostly or LinkedIn messages mostly?
Email is better. So
I
do
agree.
email if you possibly can. I did LinkedIn messages. There's no guarantee that they will accept the message. And also, I don't think you can attach things to messages. It was like I sent it as a connection request.
Yeah.
So you can't attach your materials or anything. So definitely email if possible. LinkedIn if that's all you can find, because something is better than nothing.
Now, I know there's some tools that you can use to kind of find email addresses, but how did you find somebody's email? Did you just look on LinkedIn or?
Yeah, I looked on LinkedIn. Sometimes they listed their email there, or if all I could find was their name, I would just try to Google their name. And if I couldn't find anything there, I just resorted to a LinkedIn connection request.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't know about those tools to find people's emails. I might have done that if I had realized I could do that.
I mean, I think you can probably find out just as much by Googling them and going to their portfolio and, checking out their email and things like that. So, So talk to me a little bit about kind of going off the job boards. What did you do specifically to find roles if they weren't on the job boards?
Yeah, well, there's several things that you can do. The first thing I did that I was a little nervous about, self-conscious about doing it, but CareerFoundry really recommends it, was I made a Facebook post to my friends telling them that I was looking for UX jobs. And I got at least 4 people sending me jobs to apply to or people to talk to that they knew. So I got 1 job interview that way. I also was just sort of active on following designers and on Twitter. And there's some Twitter accounts that are like job board type Twitter accounts. So there was somebody who just posted it wasn't like a repost, it was just a person saying, I'm looking to hire someone on Twitter. So I responded to that and we had some Twitter messages and I got an interview that way. I looked on LinkedIn, I'm not sure how it showed up in my feed, but I was kind of active on LinkedIn, like got involved in some different UX communities and followed some people. And somehow there was somebody likewise posting, I'm hiring somebody. There wasn't a job posting or anything. I just I responded to their post and I messaged back and forth with them. And that is the job that I ended up getting. So yeah, I would say follow your different social media channels. Make sure your friends know that you're looking, because there's a surprising number of people who know other people in the UX field. And you would never know that until they know that you're in that field.
Yep.
So maybe they don't know about particular jobs, but they can tell you other people to talk to, and you can start building your network that way through personal connections, which is cool.
So we really talk a lot about networking, and I know in our conversations we kind of talked a lot about networking. How did you find events to attend? What did you decide was valuable?
Yeah, so I was doing my whole boot camp during like maximum COVID time.
Oh no.
So there were no in-person events.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is that everything was going online. So I had access to a lot more meetups than I would have.
Yeah.
So I went on Meetup. That was a big one that I looked at. And I attended some meetups in like the Netherlands or Texas or just wherever. And you meet some nice people. And I attended some webinars. But eventually I realized that like webinars are great for learning things, but I was kind of like saturated with things that I was trying to learn. And what I really wanted to do was make personal connections with people. And webinars are not great for that. So I started making it my mission to find like smaller groups where we would actually talk between ourselves and make some personal connections, hopefully groups that would like meet every week kind of thing. I saw there's some meetups out there that are just like UX breakfast or UX support group lunch or that kind of thing. I didn't end up going to any of those, although I would recommend trying them out because they seem like a more casual place that you can make connections. I did find this UX book club that was really great because there was no homework. We just read the book out loud during the meetings and would just stop every few paragraphs and people would chime in, and it was like less than 12 people who would go. And so I started going to that every week and was able to make some more personal connections through that. And that actually led to another job interview because one of the other people attending the book club happened to know somebody who was looking for a UX designer for their project. And I had one interview there, but that was right when I accepted my current job, so that didn't go any farther, but I'm pretty sure that it would have if I had still been looking seriously at that point.
Yeah. Do you find, or I guess, what would you recommend to students or graduates that find it really stressful to network? I know that's kind of a loaded term, like network, but.
I think it's important to understand what your goals are in networking. Like, are you trying to learn new skills? Are you trying to find people to do group projects with? Are you trying to find a small number of people to get to know better? Like, because that'll help you figure out what type of events that you should attend. And so I think being really specific about your goals can take the stress out of it instead of just like flailing around like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I hope something good happens. That's really stressful.
Yeah.
And then just making a little project for yourself, like I'm going to try out, one meetup per week that looks like it fits these criteria. And that one doesn't turn out to be good, I'm going to try another one. And just be a little bit more methodical about it so that it doesn't feel so much like, oh, I'm trying to turn my introverted self into a social butterfly.
Yeah. I mean, and I also think too that everyone is kind of in the same boat. So, virtual networking events are kind of awkward for everybody. In-person networking events can be stressful for people. So just realizing that everyone is really in the same position. We all know that the job search can be super frustrating. So how did you keep moving forward?
Yeah, I think first, a really important thing is to set realistic expectations, because frustration happens when there's a gap between what we think should happen and what is actually happening. It doesn't really have anything to do with the reality of the situation. It's just our interpretation of it. So if you set realistic expectations, I think the job prep course tells you to expect your job search to take 6 months. So I told myself that I wasn't going to be concerned until it was like getting on towards 6 months. I think my search took about 3 months. Which is very good. But honestly, during those 3 months, it felt like forever.
Yeah.
And especially if you do like I did, and I started working on my resume and looking at job boards and stuff. I started that 6 months before I even like seriously devoted my time to working on the job prep course. So it really felt like I had been looking for jobs forever.
Yeah.
But I think it helped to just tell myself like, I'm applying to 5 jobs a week and I'm going to send my updates every week, and just really committing to the process and not stressing so much about the results. Similar to if somebody's trying to lose weight or whatever, they tell you just focus on doing your diet and doing your exercise and don't focus so much on the scale, because that's not something you have control over. What you have control over is what the actions that you can do, which in this case is applying to jobs. and talking to your mentor and thinking through ways that you can change your process if you feel like it's not working. And I think that updating Neely every week really helped because I made sure that any little encouraging thing that happened, I would write that in the update. And then at the end of every week, I'd have this email full of bullet points of like what I had done. And so that made me feel like I was making progress and moving forward, even if I didn't have interviews that week or offers that week. So I think that really helped.
A while back when you were talking about LinkedIn, you had mentioned recruiters. How did you find recruiters to talk to?
I think recruiters are a little bit of a tricky situation because usually they find you instead of you finding them. So one thing that I did, I read somewhere that LinkedIn tailors who they show you to by how active you are on LinkedIn. Like if a recruiter is looking for people, LinkedIn is going to try to show them the people who are likely to respond to their message. They don't want to waste the recruiter's time with somebody who never checks their LinkedIn messages. So what I tried to do is anytime anyone sent me a LinkedIn message, even if it was stupid, even if it was obvious that the recruiter had no clue what I do or what my background is, or, you know, they're trying to recruit me to like operate a forklift in a warehouse, I responded to every single inbox message in LinkedIn. And I think, you know, even if it was just, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Because eventually I started getting higher quality recruiter messages. So I think I started getting shown to more recruiters and to more thoughtful recruiters. So I would recommend just trying to be really responsive on LinkedIn. I think pretty much all the recruiters found me through LinkedIn. There were also some jobs I applied to that were like posted by a recruiting agency like Creative Circle or whatever. Then the recruiters there had access to my information. So I did get some calls so I didn't get the job. I didn't get an interview for the job I had applied to, but then another recruiter at the company called me because they had something come up and my profile was on file with the company.
Yep. And that's like such an ideal scenario for that to happen. I mean, you didn't even have to really look and somebody reached out to you. I mean, that's perfect. So what are you doing now? You don't have to say where you're working, but if you could just tell us what you're doing.
So I'm working with a company that helps people lose weight and keep it off. So I'm working on an app, and they also have, their whole thing is that they have like a like an activity tracker watch thing, and they have a Bluetooth scale and it connects to their app, and then you can weigh yourself and it'll record your activity, and your doctor will be able to, the app will talk to the doctor's software. And so right now I'm working on both the app and the doctor software side of things, doing designs for that.
So when you applied for this position, how did you set yourself apart from other candidates who wanted the same position? Because I think sometimes what I hear from students is that they feel that as maybe a recent bootcamp graduate, how can they set themselves apart?
Yeah. I think there's two steps to that. One is, how do you set yourself apart from all the other bootcamp graduates that are applying for this job? And the second is, how do you set yourself apart from just any other candidate? So to set yourself apart from bootcamp graduates, I would really recommend making sure that your portfolio does not look like just a template that you took from your bootcamp. So when you talk about your creative process, don't just say like, I define and ideate and, you know, those 4 steps that you read about. I really made my process my own. So like the bootcamp teaches you all these different tools, and I actually talked about like which tools I'm using and why. So step 1 was competitor research. It's not always going to be competitor research. Maybe somebody else has done that already. Maybe step 1 is user interviews. Maybe step 1 is something else. So making sure that your portfolio projects don't just all look like cookie cutter versions of something else. So that's how to set yourself apart from other bootcamp grads. And to set yourself apart from just candidates in general, I think it's good to have some experience. So I did an internship right out of CareerFoundry, actually while I was still doing CareerFoundry, and that really helped me with the collaboration side of things. Like that allowed me to put that I had collaborated with engineers and founders and that kind of thing. So that definitely set me apart. And I would recommend that if you can, to get some sort of real world group project experience, that really helps. So those two things, even if it's like volunteering for your local, usually different cities have volunteer projects where they help out, like, I don't know, the government website or that kind of thing.
And did you find your internship that you did you find that just on your own? How did you find it?
I'm not really sure how this person found me, but somebody just messaged me on LinkedIn saying, I try to match people up with early stage startups who are looking for interns. Would you be interested? And I was kind of like, well, that's kind of weird, but okay, like, what do I have to lose? Sure, whatever. And then I sent them, a portfolio piece or some screen samples or whatever, and I did an interview with them, and it just worked out, and it was really good. But if I had been super selective about responding to my LinkedIn messages, I might have been like, this looks weird. Maybe I won't respond to that.
Yeah. Of course, we recommend doing like your due diligence in making sure that it's okay to send information to a company. But this ended up working out perfectly. And didn't you tell me, I think during one of our calls, that your current boss actually commented on your internship?
Yeah, he said that one thing that had set me apart was working with a real company. And I think it worked out especially for him because he had a background in financial services, and the company that I had been interning with was a financial services company. So like he really understood the sorts of things, the sorts of projects I had done. And when he was looking at that, but I think he was impressed that I had done some real work and was sort of on my own thinking about like really executing all this user experience work and not just sort of like doing what somebody else told me to do.
Yeah. So we're going to be getting to the Q&A portion shortly, but how would you, or what would you say to someone that says, boy, this sounds like a lot of time to do all this analyzing of the job description? Just, it sounds like it's going to take a lot of time.
Well, so I would say that when I first started doing that whole process, each job application took me about an hour. And then with practice and after you've written a lot of cover letters and stuff, you have bits and pieces that you can reuse from them. So after I had done several, I was able to get it down to between 30 and 45 minutes per application. That sounds like a lot, but you're going to get better results if you have a few high quality ones. So let's say the applications took a whole hour. If I was only doing 5, that's 5 hours a week. That's not very much time at all. And if you have the time to do the bootcamp coursework, which is, 15 hours a week, you have time to do the job applications, because I think it really helps if you view the job prep course and the application period as just an extension of your boot camp. It's not like your boot camp ends after you finish your specialization. You move on to, another specialization, which is getting a job.
Yeah, yeah.
So
it's kind of a new phase.
Yeah, it's a new phase. So if you block out the same time that you had blocked out for your coursework and devote it to job applications, I think you'll find that they actually take a bit less time than the coursework. Yeah. And you won't feel, again, that frustration if you're expecting job applications to take no time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You'll actually feel a sense of relief if you budget the same amount of time as your coursework and then find that they take less time.
Yeah, you'll have some extra time in there.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready for the question and answer. So is William available?
I'm here. Yep. I've had some terrible internet issues, so I apologize if I tune out here. Yeah, lots of questions coming through this evening. One question we have is how many projects did you have on your portfolio at the point of applying?
I think I had about 5. So I had my main project from the UX thing, and I had my specialization project. I also had 2 sort of small side projects that I had done with my UX mentor, just to look at different aspects. There was one project that was just about information architecture, and then there was another project, forget what that one was. And then I had my project from my internship that I had been working on.
Awesome. And Neely, I feel like I've just kind of crashed the conversation, but I mean, there's also there's more questions on the right-hand side. Should we just take it in turns to choose?
Yeah, sure.
In the presenter tab, I've put down the like a list of questions. I'm not sure if you can see that or not.
Let me see here. I don't think oh yeah, I can. Yep. So this would be for Cecile. What kind of questions did you get asked during the job interview at the company that you were hired at?
I would say the particular company I was hired at was a bit more of a casual interview process. This, again, was one that didn't bother to post a job description. They just posted that they needed someone. So they asked me about what type of projects I had worked on before, what sort of teams I enjoyed working on. I think the first interview was, my boss told me, was to like make sure that I was a real and reasonable person and had a personality that they thought they could work with. And then the second interview was like a design challenge kind of thing. And he told me, only spend 4 hours on this, and here's the Figma file, and just do all your work in there. And then the second interview was to go over my work and my thinking about that design challenge. The third interview was a portfolio presentation. And I think at that point, he was pretty sure that he wanted to make me an offer. And so his thinking was present XYZ about yourself. And he actually told me the sort of things that we chatted a little bit about my background. And so he's like, talk about these things that the rest of the team probably will want to know based on what I know about them and their interests. And so I did my portfolio presentation just for the hiring manager, and then I did it for the whole team in the final interview.
And just from a career specialist point of view, we are always available to help with interviewing. So, just reach out to your career specialist or the career services channel, and we're always available to help. So.
Yeah, another question that we've got come through, maybe this is a question for Neely instead, is what kind of jobs should you apply for an internship if you only got kind of 1 year of experience? So what happens when you don't have experience? Is that an issue?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think, do you feel like you can do the job? So I think there's kind of a confidence factor in there. And I also, we had mentioned earlier when Cecile and I were chatting that a job description is really a wish list. It's what they want their ideal candidate to have. So if you don't have what they're asking for as far as number of years of experience, it's up to you to show them how, like why you, even if you don't have that experience. And, you can talk about your previous career, what you did there, So I think it really depends on you and a little bit of the job description as well.
Exactly. Another question for Cecile. This person's asking if you did any extra projects for your portfolio outside of the CareerFoundry project, so kind of like above and beyond.
Yes. So my UX mentor was very willing to help me do outside projects. So one project was, like I mentioned, focused on information architecture. And so he had this little idea. He actually came up with the idea of doing it. And then I had another outside project, which I came up with the idea was that my band really needed a website redesign. So I thought, hey, I could do that. So my mentor worked with me on doing that redesign, and I wrote that up as a portfolio project. But that was more like self-directed.
And did you focus on jobs in a specific sector? I know that you spoke that someone reached out to you on LinkedIn about this internship, but were you kind of focusing on any specific sector after the CareerFoundry program, or were you kind of like very open to working in any sector?
I was pretty open. I think that where I ended up is a really good match for my interests, but I was applying to stuff. If I looked at it and I just could not imagine being anything but bored to tears by working for that company, I didn't apply. But UX stuff is UX stuff. Even if it's sort of a boring product, your users are still going to be interesting. So there weren't too many jobs that I thought would be horrible. It was more based on if the job description didn't list duties that I thought would be interesting, then I didn't apply. But most of them are like the same sort of duties, just with a different kind of product. So I applied to a pretty wide range of stuff.
And Neely, would you advise people looking for jobs? Would you advise them to remain broad, or would you advise them to kind of like narrow down on their kind of like their main interests? Or
I mean, I would advise them to remain broad in the sense that I think you want to look for a lot of different opportunities. But as Cecile talked about earlier, I don't think you need to necessarily apply to that many positions. But I think it's okay to go ahead and look. If you feel like, oh, I have no idea even where to start, I always just recommend starting with companies you like, start with industries that you like, start from there and then kind of move forward. And, your friends, family, acquaintances are great resources too, because if they might not necessarily know about the UX department, but maybe they work for a company that they really like. And so maybe they can just talk to you about that specific company. So I think there's a lot of different ways to kind of start your job search. I don't think there's one right answer there.
Yeah. I've also done quite a few interviews. It's always amazing that I think everybody has a network of contacts already. I think some people don't realize that, but also through family and friends of friends. Also, when we have new students join the program, we think about transferable skills, is that everybody has a skills base, soft skills. Everyone brings something to the program, and lots of people bring different things to the program. So never undersell yourself or undersell your network, because their friends and family are also super important. Another question that's come through, maybe this is also again for Neely, which skills are learnable and you can refer to when saying I'm eager to learn? Because the person says, because I say this all the time, it seems not the right thing to say for the recruiter.
Well, I think you have to be maybe more specific in what you're referring to. And if you could give an example of a time where you did learn something and kind of use it in that format of challenge, action, result. So what the problem was, what you specifically did, and then what the result was. I think maybe linking those two things together will be really helpful. Because it's one thing to just say, I'm really eager to learn. But if you say, I'm really eager to learn, and let me give you an example of how I did that in this situation.
Oh my God, that's really good advice. I think, yeah, I'm gonna take that forward too. So it's always good to give hard examples.
Yes. I would think
and Cecile, yep, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I did that in a few of my interviews, and examples that I gave tended to be from my coursework. Like I did the UI specialization. And it was like, here's like, I had no visual design skills before I started this. And, look at this beautiful thing I came up with. And I spent, 3 months learning this. And here's where I got to in 3 months.
Yeah. And just one thing I wanted to add about networking is that you never know who someone knows. And I think it's actually shocking. A lot of times people might think to themselves, oh, I don't know anybody. There's nobody that can help me with my job search. Again, you'd be shocked. And I would actually start with your holiday card list. Like if you're really stuck, start there and then just start working your way out.
That's something like 7 degrees of separation.
That's right.
Maybe
Yeah.
I'm getting that wrong. You never know who you're going to find.
You never know.
Yeah. And Cecile, another question for you. And I know at CareerFoundry, we have a job preparation course to prepare students for applying for jobs and getting into the workplace. But did you start your job search before finishing the boot camp or after? That's another question that's come through.
So I started looking at job boards and starting to update my resume and stuff in the middle of the boot camp, but I didn't get any traction really until after I finished my specialization and really put in a lot of focused my attention on that. I will say I did get my internship before I finished the CareerFoundry course. So I guess my piddling around on LinkedIn did get me that, which ended up being really good timing because then by the time I had really concentrated on applying to full-time jobs, I already had 6 months of internship experience. So I found that I didn't have time to really seriously do job applications during the boot camp. So I would say maybe focus on looking around for internship opportunities or group project opportunities or something at that point, but don't expect that the level of energy you'll have is going to be enough to produce really high quality job applications at that point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How many jobs do you think you applied for before you landed your position?
Let's see. Well, let's just throw out all the jobs that I applied to before I finished the job course. And I spent, 3 months, and let's say I spent 15 weeks and 5 jobs a week. So, yeah, about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With the job applications, it's always nice to get into kind of a systematic way to apply for them. So aiming to get in a certain amount of job applications a week, because I know when you check the jobs board or you're looking for a new job, I also know my professional experience looking back, and you see lots of jobs, you think, oh, that's great. And you think, oh, I'm going to do 2, 3, 4 a day. But I suppose that then they get less and less targeted and they get a little bit more generic. And although it's nice to get an application out, you're not necessarily going to land a job with 4 or 5 very generic applications as opposed to one which is really scripted and targeted for that company that you're applying for. Another question that's come through is how much time did it take you from the moment you decided that you need to change job to the moment that you started working as a UX designer?
That's a good question.
So it took me some time to figure out that UX was what I wanted to do. So I would say it probably took, I started working, it probably took me about 2 years. So let's say I decided in May that it's time to make a change. And then it took me until maybe October or November to actually realize that UX was what I wanted to do. And so then I spent about, a few weeks researching how does one get into UX and different opportunities, like different boot camps, comparing the boot camps. So let's say that took me about a month. And then by December, I had talked to a career specialist at CareerFoundry. I had talked to somebody else just to make sure that this was the right field for me. And then I saw that there was a January enrollment date. I could have enrolled in December, but I didn't want the holidays to cut into my time. So I decided that I was going to enroll in January. So I did January to December was when it took, by the time I finished my specializations. Like I started January 6th, I finished my one specialization December 10th. And then that following January and January, I was doing the career preparation course. And then starting in February, it was just the applications. And then February, March, April, I was applying, and then I got a job in May. So I would say it took a year, almost a year and a half between deciding that I was looking into UX boot camps and actually having the job, because the boot camp took about a full year.
Is that typical, would you say, Neely, in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people take about a year to finish the course. And then, you know, of course, we allot 6 months for the job search. So, I mean, that sounds like she was pretty much right on target.
Awesome. Are there any more questions? Let's have a look. Just looking from the right-hand side. One question. Did you join as a junior UX designer or a mid-senior designer?
I joined as a junior, although I don't really have an official title like that. I think my title right now is just UX designer, and my boss's title is director of UX, but there's just 2 of us at the company right now doing UX. So it's not like I have a big hierarchy that I'm fitting into right now. And I actually find, yeah, I would say that there's different types of opportunities at different companies. I know people graduating from CareerFoundry who went to small startups like that, who maybe they're one of only a couple UX designers. And I also know people who went to larger companies like Aetna, where they're probably, you know, part of a much bigger structure.
And just to add to that, I think that really depends on you as the job seeker, because in a startup type of situation, I think you have the opportunity to maybe do a lot more things, whereas as in a bigger company, I think the role is going to be more defined. So, you know, you kind of have to do a little bit of thinking about where do you fit in best? What would you most enjoy doing?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, we're up to the hour mark. I know there are more questions, but I would say that that is all that we have time for in this hour slot. But thank you both for joining us this evening. That was super informative. And it's lovely to hear the kind of like interaction also just about the job search in general. And we've got more events lined up. Currently for September, we are offering a Women in Tech Scholarship for 25 women looking to transition into the tech industry. And after this webinar, there's also, you'll be sent to a page where you can talk to a program advisor if you've got any questions about CareerFoundry programs that we offer or anything that arose in this webinar this evening. So Cecile and Neely, thank you both for joining us, sharing all your knowledge and expertise. And I wish everyone a good evening or morning or wherever you are. And see you soon. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Good luck, everybody.
This is where I end the webinar, and there's 10 seconds to go. So it ends, but then it doesn't quite end. So
gotcha.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you so much.